Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 458, featuring Kat Dawes, who's going to teach us about NOWism. I met Kat over at THU Japan through Ryan Woodward. She's a fascinating person, very, very smart, very funny too, which I've always enjoyed her company. And she's teaching something called NOWism, which I think is really fascinating. And you can check, we'll hear all about it on the podcast, obviously, but it really can sort of help people focus in certain areas. And I think right now people are very concerned about what's going on in their future with things like AI and how does that affect their jobs. And in terms of things like, the strikes and how jobs are become not necessarily as secure as they thought they were going to be, especially in what we do. And this could be really cool to sort of put some presence into what you're doing and to think about what's happening. So it was really great to talk to her. You can definitely go check out her website at katdawes.com and learn much more about what's going on. But, listen to the podcast and it'll be a little bit clearer about everything that's going on. Really cool to have Kat on to talk about all these cool things. Okay, a couple of announcements. Yes, Vantage 2 Update 2 is out, and I'm very excited about it. It's got lots of new updates to it, including displacement and hair and fur have now been added to full real-time ray tracing, something that I've been using a lot of Vantage lately, and it's really, really exciting. So can't wait to see what's going to happen in the next updates because they just keep creating these really, really cool advances in Vantage. We also have V-Ray 6 Update 2 has come out as well for SketchUp and Rhino. Includes many, many updates, including V-Ray first Grasshopper updates. So definitely go check that out. Just go to chaos.com for all of our product updates over there. We don't have any events lined up just yet or anything that I'm going to announce just yet. I just want to sort of jump into the podcast. But for those of you who want to know more about the podcast, just go to chaos.com/CG Garage. That's where all of our podcasts are stored. And if you'd like to watch this podcast, you can go to youtube.com/chaosgrouptv. That's where we store all our videos, including our podcasts. And if you'd like to suggest some podcasts, we had many of them that were really great in 2023, and I would like to, we're even going to do some suggestions in 2024. So please just email us, labs@chaos.com. We'd love to hear from you. But for now, please enjoy episode number 458 with Kat Dawes.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
What's always easier for everyone is to know a little bit about your background. Where did you come from? What is the thing that inspired you, that sort of made you the person you are today?
Oh, such a big cosmic question. So my name is Kat Dawes. I came from a background in theatre and dance, music.
Really?
Yeah. I've always loved theatrics and entertainment. But then I've also got a sort of metaphysical, spiritual interest, philosophy, spirituality, religions. I always had that question as a kid, like, where do we really come from? Like, what's the bigger story here? Mm-hmm. And so my mission has been to create a cross-pollination of entertainment and metaphysics to bring forth the ancient message in sort of a funky new package, hence my now business, which is called NOWism.
Yes.
Yeah, where I'm promoting the present moment. It's a full-time gig.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I know, and that's kind of interesting, and I want to get into what that is, but not just right now.
Blasphemy.
I know, but I do want to, I'm just joking, but now I do want to talk about a little bit about why, obviously your background and your dance and your performance in theater, like how did that influence the things that you do? Like why did you get interested in dance and theater when you were younger?
Born into it. Yeah, my mother was a dancer.
Oh yeah.
And she owned a ballet school in Brisbane Queensland, Australia.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so, I spent the days on a polished wooden floor as a little one, just waiting for the time when I could stand at that bar and join the bigger humans in the classes. So, yeah, it was really just by default, I would say. But I did have a love for it, and I had a natural talent for it too, so I stuck with it for quite a while, and then eventually moved into musical theatre stuff, cruise boats and that sort of thing.
Really?
Until eventually I had a deeper sort of desire to not just, be an instrument in other people's works of art, but rather I felt like I had something to say, And so then I took to the streets of Sydney.
Took to the streets?
Yeah, as a busker, we call it.
Really?
But not all American humans know that word, busking. Do you
What
know
is
the word?
busking? Is?
No, yeah, okay. Busking is, when you stand on the street with your guitar and you sing.
street performer.
Yeah, street performer. Yeah,
Right.
busking.
Busking, nice.
Yeah. So that's when my first shot at, like the message of like just connecting with humans and through song. And there's something so incredible about music in particular that just it says a lot of things without saying it, And so I was very taken by that, and it was the beginning of a wonderful path.
Yeah. Eddie Izzard did that too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way to connect with people and you have to get their attention.
You have to catch their precious attention, and it's not easy. And you have to have a real like sort of decision to be there because you really love it. Now, when you're making a living from it too, that can add a little mushy
Stress.
sort of line there. So, but that's what then really connected me to this sort of metaphysical stuff too. Is like, well, can I be the right condition to attract money in the present moment, as well as like through music and, banging on about some message that's important to me, preaching my little socks off as a, 21-year-old.
Right.
Can that really call forth the financial support that one needs to exist?
Sure.
And I had an amazing ride with that, actually. Taught me a lot.
How long were you doing that?
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 years solid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I made a good living from it. I, rented a unit down there in Bondi Beach.
Okay.
In Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good times.
That was a good time, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, there is something that you do where you're thinking about the message of what it does for you spiritually, right? In terms of the message you're trying to do spiritually. What were the things that you learned from that process in those 4 years that you were doing there?
Yeah, I learned the art of service when you're on the street singing for a living. People can assume your story, actually. It puts you in a very vulnerable position where some people can assume you're homeless or that you have some addiction problem or, something to this sort of nature. But while you're standing there and doing the hours, and I had a regular spot or two that I would that was my place, you do get to know the homeless folk on the streets. You do start to see like the politics of the street and this sort of thing. And what I really learned was the art of gratitude, of being truly grateful for that which I do have, seeing that around me many others don't have so much. And then also witnessing the radical generosity of homeless people who would be given a $10 bill, but then would come and give it to me because there I am standing there banging out a tune, and for them, they're just in this sort of cycle of having and not having on their level in that paradigm of poor or homeless, or call it whatever you want. Some of us call it free. It depends on how you want to look at it.
Sure.
But yeah, I learned a lot from being in that lane. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Was it hard?
Can be, yeah. It was sometimes hard. Sometimes it was really hard. I mean, sometimes when it's cold and it's raining, you stand there and you sing anyway, because you have to. Other times it's exhilarating and you meet the most awesome humans that are so generous. I've looked down more than once and there's $1,000 in the guitar case, because of someone's generosity and just whatever happened, like my story collided with theirs and they just felt an opportunity to give. And so I think that makes you into a giver when you are relying on the generosity of strangers to catch their precious attention, to maybe move them. I mean, I had so many people quit their jobs standing in front of the guitar case listening to me banging out a tune, and then they'd take their tires off, like, right, that's it. I'm not going back. I actually hate my job, and I've got to take a risk. I've got to try something new out. And yeah, just witnessing some of the raw moments of humanity, they feel open to share.
What were you sharing with them that caused them to make that decision?
Well, it's sort of the beginning of the message of NOWism was through lyrics, song lyrics.
Okay.
So yeah, I was singing about that you can choose to be happy and that you're creating your reality, and all that sort of fun stuff. And yeah, quite often they're regular folk that in that community going to work back and forth every day, and I'd be there, and sometimes it'd be a year before they'd actually talk to me, and then they would have this like moment of a raw truth coming through, and I'd be their witness. Yeah, there's quite a few stories like that taking place.
That's really interesting. So this was it. So this was this catalyst for you. You were saying you were singing songs, you were witnessing people, you were seeing generosity, and you saw you had something you could share that with other people. And that sort of was the catalyst for what you're calling now, your NOWism, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the being able to share a message that can maybe just slightly uplift someone feels like a good idea.
Right.
And yeah, I got more and more attracted to that, because there's something just so beautiful when it's not just about the money that you got in the case, but rather when someone comes over and actually thanks you for putting a little break in the mundaneness of their day or whatever. You start to realize that maybe there's something bigger going on, and you
sure.
Yeah.
So what happened what made you stop doing that specific thing and sort of to do other things? Did you go from there to suddenly saying, I'm going to do this thing called NOWism, or did it sort of evolve from there? What was the evolution?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually, I met a guy who wanted to play guitar too, we used to busk together. And then I had a bit of a radical plot twist where I wanted to actually go out into the world and to see, does my conversation with the universe go beyond just busking, and can you actually become the condition for what you need as you need it going out there? And so I took a more radical decision, which was to go and hitchhike around Africa for a year.
Risky.
Yes, my parents were not impressed.
Yep.
Yeah. I do have family in Southern Africa, and so it wasn't totally alien to me. But yeah, heading up through Swaziland into Mozambique and Malawi and Zambia and Zimbabwe and these places. I mean, I was really moved by a lot of books that I was reading about this conversation that you are having with the universe, that you are co-creating. And so I wanted to see that if you take away what us in the Western world would say the safety nets, and if you pull those out, and I mean, I rocked up there with probably about $200 to my name, and to just head north and see what story emerges when there is not really a plan, but you have an intention, and to just sort of keep fertilizing the soil of the possibilities, and then just see what story unfolds in the day. That's when life got really, really interesting in terms of NOWism, my conviction for this practice, and why I teach it now to hundreds of people around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really very good boot camp. Yeah.
I remember very specifically when I didn't think I told you, but I grew up most of my life as an American in Europe, and then I came to the United States until I was 17, and I went to the school, and there was, I was kind of learning America for the first time as an American, which was kind of a strange thing. But I remember there was a guy, he was Dutch, actually. No, he was Danish. But he did a slideshow called America or something like that. But he hitchhiked around America and saw like the underclass of the United States, which is something that's not very well documented. And he did this slideshow of all of these encounters of people that were living in Harlem and all these different places and all this incredible stuff. And I remember seeing this and being very, very emotional about it, realizing like, because I lived in Cairo when I was a kid. So I did see the underclass of Cairo, but realized that underclass actually existed in the United States too, or not just privilege. And so being thankful for these things is something that I absolutely understand what you're trying to say. And it was so moving to see that journey that he went through. So when you started to describe Africa and your journey, that picture of that guy traveling through the United States, having a similar journey just came to mind.
Yeah.
And how it's very spiritual.
Yeah, it is. And it's tricky to put it into words to really like pack the punch of what really happens to you when you throw yourself out into the world, and especially in a culture like Africa is a very big word, and it's a very big continent.
Huge continent.
So Africa is very general, and but to cross those borders with, the Lonely Planet guide, which by the way I used to debate whether I should keep carrying it because it's quite heavy. It was a kilo,
right?
It was a heavy book to haul around, and then you'd mission to get to this backpackers in Malawi. You get there and the place is run down and it's gone. There's so many crazy, incredible stories that just threw your heart wide open into having true trust.
Sure.
That life is working for you and not against you. Yeah.
How long were you doing that? How long did you?
1 year.
1 year. Okay.
Yeah, 1 whole year.
And is that was a thing that finally like?
That was an initiation.
That was your initiation.
Yeah, because when you're on the road and you walking streets, carrying water because you don't know if there's water where you're headed, Africa and all the different diseases, the dogs, the things there's you have to have a game with your consciousness to stay aligned and to stay positive, especially when you've been standing trying to get a ride for a few hours and the sun's going down and you have no clue. There is a game to play in your own mind so that you lean towards the alkalinity of positivity and possibility instead of actual problems and
fear.
Potential fear, doubt, worry,
right.
lack, loss, all the things. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. It's very interesting. So, how did you turn that into NOWism, and then explain what NOWism is?
Yeah. So through being schooled by having no schedule and doing a year in Africa, and it wasn't that unlike the busking in some ways. Like it's a distant cousin of a similar type of trust, a similar sort of faith. I returned back in Australia with a really sort of excited spirit of like, there's so many possibilities and you really can create something out of nothing. I had some amazing stories happen in that journey. And what I did learn for sure is that if you can keep offering the universe, I'm trying to not sound too woo-woo, but it's a bit difficult, but if you can offer in your energy, in your focus, a leaning towards possibility or potential instead of problems, something starts to happen. And if you do it like going to a gym and you work a muscle and you look for what's working instead of being in such an excellent description of what's not working, which is very much our culture today. We're very much in a culture of what's not working and why things need to change and how it could be better. And what I learned is through a persistent, consistent tuning of the way that I'm speaking to myself, the way that I'm processing reality, that actually you become a condition for synchronicities and you turn up in the right place at the right time. I started to look very lucky, let's just say that. And lucky meaning, I would walk into the answers. I started to look like I was walking into the answers every single time. And what I knew was that in my interiority, I'm actually practicing something though. And it's like a little secret sort of ninja stance that I had with my consciousness to continue to become a condition for success.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so then I started to teach it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I started to teach it.
So how did you do this? How did you come up with, is it your name or is it a thing that existed before? Or?
Right. That's a great question. When I looked it up, because I was just drawing, I was doodling, and I was drawing this sort of very androgynous, contemporary-looking, meditating person. And at the bottom of it, I wrote NOWism. That person is practicing NOWism, which is the art of conscious participation in the present moment.
Right.
And then I was like, NOWism, and I got really fascinated with it. I was like, I wonder if that word is...
It is used there.
Right. And so I Googled it back then, which was like really early internet. It was actually an art movement in the 40s originally.
It was, yes. That was going to, because I looked it up too.
Yeah, did you? Yeah.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it can also be used in the exact opposite of how I use it. NOWism is the frivolous sort of consumerism.
Only being not thinking of the future. Right.
Right. But being really throwaway and I don't care how much I consume in the present moment because now's all you've got. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not what you have
no.
at all. Obviously not.
No, it's quite the opposite. And so, the other way that it came through originally, in fact, I think I would have given you one of these ones.
You did.
Was, when I was playing with this word and I really was in love with the idea that now really is all we've got, like the present moment, but now is eternal. And I was so like caught up in the beauty of this sort of concept. And I sat in front of a computer and I wanted to have something truly powerful and amazing happen. So I sat and I breathed and I bring myself into the present moment. And then I wrote on the screen now, NOW, and then I sat there. And then underneath it, I wrote voucher. And then I was like, that's super weird, like now voucher. And then I wrote, use this now, get another now free. And then my whole reality just rippled into this branding of taking ancient wisdom
and turning it into
a sort of
traditional marketing.
Right. And
it's so funny though.
It's to be really playful with the seriosity of our paperwork and the red tape that we do.
Can you do me a favor? Can you read this card? Because I'd love the people to hear
on
it.
The back? Yeah.
Yes. Well, it says, is this now?
Yes.
Unlimited offer.
Unlimited offer.
Yes.
Now voucher. Yeah. Use this now and get another now free. Then we've got an infinity sign.
Right.
And it says, it's an authentic NOWism reminder. And on the back in the fine print, it says, valid now, offer never ends, best used deliberately, non-refundable but instantly renewable, not exclusive to time and space. Conditions apply if you put them there. Spontaneous use recommended, may induce random laughter. Wow, now. And then make this moment count.
Right.
On behalf of the present moment, thanks for filling it up consciously. And that's, this was the birth of an entire flavor of spirituality.
Right.
Where I always felt like spirituality really needed new marketing. I remember trying to talk to my dad about some of the revelations that I'd had, even just reading about Buddhism or Christianity or any of that stuff. And he just used to shut down full atheist vibes. And I was like, man, spirituality needs new marketing. It's gotten a little bit heavy, a little bit old, a little bit heady.
Sure.
And so, the voucher led way to the time and space contract. We've got VIP backstage passes to the present moment. I've got now soap, wash your hands of the past, warrant for your rest, evictions from the comfort zone. I mean, there's an onslaught of playful things, which has become the curriculum of NOWism, which is what I teach.
Right.
Right.
I love it because it put a smile on my face and it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And it also makes me feel like I'm not too concerned that this is going to be too serious. This is going to make me just feel good.
Right. And that's where, for me, entertainment, stories and fables and play, they're the greatest educators. We can sit and watch a talking head metaphysical conversation or mindset conversation, personal development, and they're great. But to throw it into a playful sort of instrumentality is a function is really, for me, more memorable. It's catchy. We play with stuff. I have a curriculum called The Game of NOWism, and we play with cleaning up the pollution of your mental atmosphere. Try not to be a moment terrorist.
Right.
Activate your inner now ninja. Go to the thank bank. Be grateful. So it's just being easy about it, being playful, has created great results for me personally, and also a lot of my clients. Yeah.
So explain that. So you do have a business then. So how does it work? So what are people getting out of this, and how do people
Okay, so
work?
the game of NOWism has been helping hundreds of people around the world to clean up their mental atmosphere and to basically learn your patterns of stress and sadness and madness, and learn how to offset that and shift it into a mastery of the present moment. So basically what it is, and at the moment COVID sent everyone online, obviously, and so that was a wonderful time for me, actually. We had people from all over the world joining the NOWism game, which is a 12-week online sort of extravaganza of this content where you're on a task to win the moment and to save it from unnecessary negativity. And so we cultivate an understanding of your own inner villains. So you got your momentarists, and then you meet your inner ally, which is your now ninja. And you learn there's a whole toolbox for consciousness. We've got a switch, we've got a quack, water up a duck's back, we've got a reframe, we've got the shift and the lift, and there's like a series of tools that assist you to sort of manage the present moment so that you can sort of surf the day with a level of ease and flow, and ultimately to become unbotherable.
Right.
So that you can live a happy, playful, generous, abundant life and not get too caught up in the fear campaigns.
Okay. So I know that a lot of my listeners are going to need some specific help in this area because right now they're all panicking. There's a lot of panic happening right now.
There is.
In the creative space. Specifically, most of the things, if you ask anyone what they're worried about, they're all worried about AI is going to take their jobs, AI is stealing their work, AI. And most of that is dealing with unknowns.
Yes.
And they don't know their value.
Yeah.
They don't know that they still have value, what that value is, how they can change that value.
Yeah.
What would you, if you're going to look at someone who's dealing with this, and I don't think for some of them the pandemic didn't help; it made things worse. Right?
100%.
How are they going to? What is some of the tools that they can use? Beyond working with you more directly, but what are some of the things that could help them out in terms of understanding?
No, it's a really good question, and I'm super honored to offer value. So first of all, I want to mention that there would have been a time where the people that were thriving in the horse and cart market freaked out when the car came along.
Sure.
There was, the candle market when electricity and light bulbs came along. Like there are so many moments in human history where there's been a paradigm breaking moment. And so first of all, we either react or respond to things. And so at first, of course, we're having a reaction to AI. It's so fascinating and it's so scary simultaneously. And my heart goes out to a lot of the artists who are straddling both worlds. To cultivate a response instead of a reaction is really the premise of NOWism. So what if there's a great gift in this? What if there was a way to sort of adapt a new flow? What if the rise of AI is actually a part of the initiation of my own evolution as an artist? And so it requires new questions. But do you see how it's the difference between a reaction and a response is a type of contemplation.
Okay.
What if there is good here? What if there is a possibility? What if this is a really important part of me becoming a greater artist? What if the rise of AI puts a huge value on human art eventually? So first of all, to remember you have a choice to react or respond. Second of all is I recommend, to train the mind to look at what's working. We get really obsessed with what's not working, and the inflammation of interpretation is really a huge part of the problem. When we fan the flames of only the issue, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Meanwhile, there are so many things that are working. And so to soften the edge a little bit by just keep noticing what's working, because there's a lot of things working. What are they? The fact I can take a breath, there's a big blue sky, our microphones are working, this coffee that your wife made is so delicious. There's the list of what's working is bigger.
Right.
by doing these things, so you're wondering, well, how does this help the rise of AI and the war of the things that is taking place? By like solutions are not created by the energy of the problem. Right. Being in like it's very paraphrasing who's it, Einstein, but the energy of debate and the problem is not going to fertilize the answer.
Right.
So to soften the present moment, to get involved with more alkaline energies instead of a toxic sort of shitstorm of a commentary of what's not working, oh my God.
Right.
Like that was softened. And that's where we become the condition for insight, for new ideas, for revelation. And so, yeah, but it's a huge conversation, right? I mean, this is the beginning of a very big conceptual,
But this is I think one of the things that has become very interesting, and especially in social media, right? Social media thrives on negativity, by design.
Yeah, media,
right?
if it bleeds,
because they know that more people are going to share anger than they're going to share joy.
Right. So how do we make joy sexy again?
Yeah, that's a...
Right.
Yes, that's exactly my question.
Yeah. I'm trying. Okay. Use this now, get another now free.
Right. But but people don't engage with sexy.
No.
Well, they do engage with sexy, but not that kind of joy, right?
Right. And this is a cultural situation. We have inherited a fear campaign here, and it's got incredibly genius marketing. It's coming in through like TVs and magazines and billboards. It's like on your news feeds. It's everywhere. It's
propaganda, though. Propaganda is based on fear.
It is, and it's very successful currently.
Right.
And meanwhile, there's a lot of beauty in this world, but our culture is interested in the problems. Now, this is something Ryan and I talk about quite a lot, because even though we know that this fear campaign is legit, and the whole fight here is the currency, is to get hold of your currency, which is not your money, it's your attention.
It's your attention. Well, your attention turns into dollars, though.
Right, it does. So
through advertising.
But the universal currency is your precious attention.
But this is what's so brilliant about this, is because this is in the language of advertising.
Right. Right, and that's where the interruption.
I'm using the card that she's talking about.
There is an interruption, a disruption that I really wanted to try and capture using a brilliantly metaphysically, like a poignant message, but delivered through the tackiest possibility.
Right.
There is this fear campaign. Even though so many of us know that it's a fear campaign, we still invest our precious attention. Mm-hmm. And here's what's really funny. Then we get angry at the anger, or we get sad about the sadness, or we get frustrated at the frustration.
Right.
And the problem here is we're accidentally still voting for the very dystopian future that we're arguing right now this is not the way. And so my invitation is for us to get interested in what's working.
Sure.
And that's a discipline, actually. It's much easier to go flicking through socials and to see another drama, or to see another daggy human on Instagram that's pretending that their life is perfect. You know, and then we bitch about it. But to actually put a quality control department in place and to be on the front line here of the change, and to represent the energy of the answer, and to actually spread this message and encourage people in coffee shops to talk about possibilities instead of problems.
Right.
We sit down and we compare the bills of the tax and the fuel and the things, and it's such a predictable, boring conversation. Like sit down and talk about possibilities.
Yes.
Sit down and talk about like the ripple effect of kindness and something amazing that you saw today that blew your mind.
I think it's so sad, just in exactly what you said, like creativity and art should always be the thing that inspires and does. And somehow it got sucked into the rabbit hole of this negativity.
It did. And look, everything has its place and space. And I know that hardcore, messaging through art has its place, and it can be very powerful to shift people into a new mindset. But I do feel like what really matters here is the in-between moments. And our in-between moments are being filled with the fear campaign. You know, what if it doesn't work out? What if we run out of time? What if humans really are doomed? Like, what if, you know, like there is so much genius amongst us. There's so much fun amongst us. There's so much brilliance and beauty and so much kindness too. But we've got to start talking about it. We've got to get interested in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what role could art and creativity play in sort of bringing back that feeling and making people excited about it again?
Yeah, I think it's about bringing it back to airtime. Airtime, like when I say airtime, I mean that in a NOWism context. Airtime in our minds when there is art that is encouraging people to play or to think or to imagine or to share or to be kind, like something to participate in. Here's and now, pass it on. You know, like when art plays a role and encourages a momentum that then it's getting more airtime in people's minds.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then airtime on televisions and radios and podcasts and, you know, the airtime, because the currency really is our attention. So how do we amplify a message of possibilities so that it's getting more airtime? You know, and I truly believe that global transformation takes place through individuals. Like that's when I wake up, everybody benefits.
Right.
So this is the bit where we're not so helpless. Maybe it only begins and ends right here in our own homes.
Right.
You know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a deep passion for storytelling, specifically in film and movies. I love great stories and I love how they tell things. But I think what something has come up more recently where heroes used to not be heroic in movies. Heroes used to be seriously flawed and sometimes in really bad ways. And the role that those stories used to be was for you to look at the badness in those characters and see that reflected in yourself and make you realize that that's the person you don't want to be anymore.
Right.
And so now it seems that stories are only showing you the model of what you should be rather than self-reflection of how you need to change. Do you think that that's true in terms of making the choices that you make today?
100%. You know, Ryan, my husband Ryan, and I talk about this a lot, that a lot of the heroes come into this stories flawless beings.
Superheroes.
You know,
they're not even heroes, they're superheroes.
Yeah, and they're foxy looking things, you know, they're very charismatic. But there's no way to connect with that, you know, like there's, and this is, I feel like the real task here is for the great storytellers to step forwards and to the independence, you know, like, because obviously there's a commercialization of the campaign of fear, which is it's hard to get the good stories in there, but yeah, I do feel like the stories today are lacking the reflective nature. There was a time where I would leave a cinema and I would think about that movie for days and days on end. Like you'd just be so moved by it. But now that is truly lacking. I do feel like, yeah, to look for yourself in another, in the story, in a friend, in a stranger, that is the ultimate, like, awake move that you can make, like from your own consciousness, to be interested in where's the reflection here, like where is me in this,
right?
But I feel like it's a type of person that goes about life from that space. You know, when you go to a movie, it's a type of person that will look for themselves in the story, you know. And I don't know if that's an education thing or cultural. Yeah. It's
hard because, you know, there's such a difference, right? There's ways that you can look at reflection of yourself as either empathy or narcissism, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true. Yeah.
So how do you, you know, if you're looking at yourself and you're trying to reflect on who you are and where you want to be, what does that mean? And is it okay to just think about yourself?
Yeah. Right. I think that there is that inflammation of narcissism it's very interesting. The rise of social media and the pointing of the camera back, which then rises up this comparison, and there's a real plague of lack of self-worth. Mm-hmm. Unworthiness is a plague amongst us, you know. And I it's my great hope that the the truly brilliant storytellers will stop being so shy, come out from amongst us, and continue to rise up in great stories. It's very much needed, during this time in human history. And I think there should be probably a renaissance.
I hope so. We were making a comment on my other podcast, Martini John, that there was a warning on a movie on Hulu, I believe, that said, warning may have, sexual content, drug use. And it says, one of the warnings was unlikable protagonist character. That was a warning.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That's radical.
Isn't that crazy?
I'm just giving my husband eye contact. What?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that insane?
It really is.
I mean, yeah. And the fact that they're changing the edit of the French Connection because he's too racist.
Right.
It's like, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
The whole point is to take him and realize that he's a really horrible person.
Yeah. There's one thing that I've learned from Ryan Woodward is about the, making sure that your villain isn't just straight up unlikable, like to create like a conflict in the viewer there where, are they
Or you relate to the villain.
yeah. Are they just misunderstood, or you hear that backstory and you start to connect with them. I mean, that's what great stories should do, is where the thematic argument is so strong that you have to think as a viewer, whereas the stories are really being dished out as this is what you're going to think. And it's like, propaganda on smack, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite comedies is actually Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And the reason I love it so much is that each person, either good or bad, has the opportunity to be good or bad. And so everyone has a flaw or redeems themselves in some way.
Right.
And it's the kind of one of the things that makes you realize how human we all are. And so everyone you encounter actually has that opportunity to fail in front of you or be good in front of you.
Yeah, it's a topic that I deal with a lot in my classes too, where you have a friendship for many years and suddenly there's some sort of weird little plot twist and you become the villain in that person's life,
right?
And people break up with you, and you just didn't see it coming, and there's this like cross wires of story and who did what and why, and
it
it's
could all be a misunderstanding,
right? A huge misunderstanding, and suddenly you find yourself playing the actual role of the villain in someone else's story, and it's like it's such an incredibly humbling thing to experience, and I love that. I think that everybody goes through a period where you've become the villain in someone's life for whatever reason, and for me, it's always created this deep sort of surrender and ultimately compassion towards the greatest story of all of us. There's always missing information every time.
Yeah. I have a feeling that there's, in the creative side of things, I have a feeling there's some people who have become villains in other people's minds just because they have embraced AI as a tool in their thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's, I like the idea of missing information because we all only know what we think we know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And, whatever drives people to make new decisions or to evolve is very personal. It's something that we see in families a lot. Maybe you've experienced this in your family where you decide to work on something in you and change a part of your behavior, but your family feels like they know you so well. They're like, oh yeah, give it a go, mate, but we know who you really are. And so they're holding you to your past, to the looping of your old patterns.
Your past, yes. Like, I know how you behaved 15 years ago, and I'm still going to hold you accountable for that.
And it's, one of the greatest gifts we can give each other is this sort of fresh slate. What if there is a gift here? And again, it's that whole, the context of the NOWism practice is to look for, there's an evolutionary gift here. What is it? I'm going to grow from this, even if it's a shit circumstance. Like I'm going to find something in this eventually, and I feel like it can soften some of the suffering. Yeah.
Now let's talk about story, because I think story is something that's something I'm passionate about. I know it's definitely something Ryan's passionate about. And I think there's something about story that is important in what you describe as NOWism. So how does story fit in, and how do you structure that story for yourself to be able to get to your next evolution of where you want to be?
Right. It's a great question. And At the front door of the NOWism curriculum, I introduce you back to yourself as free will, that you've come from eternity into time and that you are here to unfold as a great story. And that's your gig here. And your job is to co-create reality the best you can. Try to remember that you're creating reality through the currency of your precious attention. And you're going to unfold into a great story. So your job is to remember that you're the lead character in a story. And this is another thing that Ryan and I love to contemplate quite often, is that when we go to a cinema and you go and watch a movie, you sort of, if it's going to be a great film, right, you expect the lead character to face some part of themselves, hopefully that wound of a true hero in a story, where they get to a dark place, they face something unknown, they have their backs against the wall, they don't know how they're going to get through, but then they evolve or change either themselves or something in the environment. They have to shift something in order to have the breakthrough. And it's really interesting that we approach a film knowing that we're looking for that exceptional scene where, there's going to be like a huge breakthrough moment. But then when it comes to our own lives, we don't really want the dark moment. We don't want to face unknown, have our backs against the wall. Like, we sort of want to.
No, we avoid it like crazy.
We want to be in a predictable, boring film, actually, where the lead character is doing the same thing in the same way, and it's all very safe.
Right.
And so one of the premises of the game of NOWism is to remember that you're the hero in this story, and that if you find yourself in one of those annihilating chapters where you are free falling and you have fear and you're worried and your back's against the wall, to just have one finger on being the writer and the director as well, that's got the bird's eye view of the story, that this is the peak moment in a story where you're being initiated to grow your wings.
Yeah.
And so
you're about to get into the third act.
Right. And so I feel like this creative sort of filter to look at your own life through this filter of creativity, and like I'm a lead character in this story, allows for you to just have a little pilot light of hope for those moments where, the shift has hit the fan and you really don't know what's about to happen. Just to remember that, perhaps you're about to grow your wings.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges, and you sort of hinted a little bit about this when you were working in the streets of Sydney. You still had the responsibility of earning enough money, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard. And you stuck to your guns. You said your story. You did what you need to do, but you had to think about but I still have to make enough money.
Yes.
I can't just do what I want to do, and I'm just going to magically get paid for that.
Right. Yeah. So you're facing the realities of an anxiousness, an anxious urgency, particularly when it's cloudy and the rain's coming in, and it's like, it's not really a good day for busking. There is an art to chilling the jets of anxiousness, and again, in the beginning of NOWism training, we work on context of life. Your context of life determines your perception of life. So we build, it's like being in a little video game. You got to build your tools. You got to build your strength and your training outside of the combat moment, right? So one of the tools that you learn in NOWism is trust. Is to trust that life is working for you, not against you. That a way is made eventually. That money does come. That the fundamental undertone of the universe is abundance, that you actually come from abundance, you're made of abundance, therefore you're sort of swimming in a sea of abundance. So these are some of the consciousness sort of flexing of the muscles to create a context that will determine your perception. So trust is a really big piece to know that, yes, I've got to take action. And I can't just sit and dream the dream and hope that the universe is just going to hand me money for no reason. But to try and sort of cultivate an energy of a higher vibration, so that I'm taking inspired action as opposed to gotta, should, must action. Like if I don't, and like that hustle action is very anxiously driven. Sometimes it can be exciting, but a lot of the time there's a nervousness, like there's a whip behind you, you've got to keep moving. But when we anchor ourselves in the energy of trust, trust is also a language. When you trust, you talk to yourself a certain way. A lot of NOWism has to do with the commentary that we have with ourselves about not having enough money. So for instance, I'll give you an actual straight up tool. One of the tools being the reframe. Even though I need to make more money right now, quickly. I do like knowing that money always comes.
Sure.
Even though I have no idea how I'm about to make the next dollar, I do like knowing that this feeling is always temporary because the scene changes.
Right.
Other characters come along. So even though I feel like my back's against the wall, I'm actually freaking out right now. I do like knowing that at least I'm sitting here contemplating and leaning in the direction of a possibility instead of a problem.
Right.
And so like it's really these little tools that can help soften the hectic conversation that we're having about I don't have money. I've never had any money. My parents didn't have any money. No one's got any money. And look at the prices of things. Like those conversations inflame the urgency and the anxiousness that we have. So the commentary is so important for chilling the jets of emotions in the game of NOWism. And when we learn how to cultivate a muscle of trust with language and then ultimately posture as well, then the story changes around you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everything you say can translate so easily towards the anxiety that people are having about the future of their creative tasks and what they're doing. Because a lot of people out there are sitting there, they made money being concept artists or whatever, and they're seeing that completely dissolve in front of their eyes which is not necessarily a truism, right? It's not a truism, but that fear is like, oh my God, everything I've learned is wasted. Because it's been completely taken over by this machine. Yeah. And it's not, by the way, the machine didn't do it. The machine doesn't do anything until someone types something into it, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard for them to sort of understand what it's going to imply for their future. And I don't blame them. I think people have been told that you're going to have a future. People were told you're going to have a future. As long as you know how to program a computer, you're always going to have a future. Turns out computers are better at programming themselves than people are.
Right. And we were just talking about this at the CTN Expo, that the 2D animators, the original 2D animators, thought they'd always have a job in 2D.
Right.
And then along came Toy Story and some of these other amazing 3D things, and the whole culture around 2D changed.
Right.
And so individuals like Ryan Woodward had to take these animating skills and move towards storyboards.
Right.
But he responded instead of reacting.
Yes.
Maybe he reacted first.
Well, it's the same thing. Aaron Sims, who I know as well. Aaron Sims was basically he worked for practical and stop motion guys and did all this miniatures and all that stuff. And then CG came along, and a lot of people just flipped the tables and left the industry.
Right.
And he was like, well, maybe I'm going to start learning how to make a monster on the computer.
Right.
And he learned, and then now he has his own studio and everything else. So I think it's important for people to evolve in some way. I'm not necessarily saying that there isn't a reason to be concerned about what AI does and how it works or what it's trained on.
Absolutely.
But I do believe that sitting here bitching about it is not going to work.
No. And also, how's about taking a moment to acknowledge the larger story here? Like, we are a small group of people that are straddling two paradigms right now. We saw our grandparents do that with phones, with cars, with television, with so much technology that was born out of the last 100 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we are literally on the precipice of a new era, and it's either frightening or exciting.
Right.
Depending on whether we react or respond.
Right.
And so even though there is definitely the use of AI, and the same as a knife though, right? My knife's going to cut up a pumpkin. It can also stab a human.
Right.
Electricity can come through a light bulb, or it can be used in an electric chair. Like, what is the use of AI? Maybe the problem here is our moral undertone, the spiritual undertone. There is something wonderful happening, and we're all participating.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a that's a good way to put it. And it's so nice to have a positive view on things.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Kat.
And slightly annoying sometimes, I'm sure.
No.
Ask my husband.
No, I think you guys are really great. And I was so grateful to meet both of you. I mean, I've met Ryan before, but to meet you in person, because I've heard from you about you through Ryan, and then seeing it. And that's so when he's like, oh, well, we're going to be in town. It's like, well, let's get Kat on the podcast because I want to talk about NOWism. So it's perfect.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. It's been, really great to dive into your world for a minute and talk about art and all things.
Not me diving into your world.
Yeah, so fun.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, bless.